Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric, and continuing end of the year series, the Unported Playlist Hall of Fame, where I nominate and induct more games in my own personal arcade Hall of Fame, games that have never been ported home. And there should be an obvious one. We're playing Cadillacs and Dinosaurs by Capcom on the Capcom CPS board with Q Sound. And I did a beat 'em up series earlier in this year, basically winter into spring, and everyone asked why I didn't include Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. That's because I always planned on inducting it into the Hall of Fame this year. This is one of the absolute straight up best beat 'em ups of all time, not just from Capcom, but from any developer. It is just an incredible experience from start to finish. We're going to be talking about it today. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. In a lot of ways, this game is basically the precursor to something like Alien vs. Predator, another one of Capcom's best arcade games of all time. You have the beat 'em up mechanics, you have the weapon system, but it takes place in the universe of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs versus Alien and Predator. And depending on your taste, maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, because they are completely different properties. And as of the recording of this video, and I'm sure nothing has changed, it is still an unported arcade game, and that is just wild. But I kind of understand. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is one of those franchises and licenses you either know it or you don't. And full admission, the only reason I know it exists and I enjoy it is because of this Capcom game right here. Otherwise, I've never actually watched or read anything. And that is kind of the interesting thing when it comes to licensed games. Some properties still hold their overall sort of social cachet in the public consciousness. Alien, Predator, still getting movies in those franchises, and they're still great, but I'm really not sure what sort of entertainment is still out there for Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. So maybe it's one of those things. Maybe the accountants at Capcom thought about porting this even in the modern era, but thought to themselves, well, it isn't as big of a property anymore, and the license isn't cheap, so we might not actually even recoup or make any money on the investment. That's why some things just end up left in the arcades. But as far as the gameplay is concerned, the mixture of weapons and beat 'em up here is just a straight up 10 out of 10. There's such good combat. You have 4 different characters. They all have their own unique moveset and vibe. Some of them are weapons experts like Hannah here. Other ones are going to have some amazing running attacks. You kind of just get to decide how you want to play the game, or if you want, you can cycle through the characters one after the other like I'm doing here. You'll see the next boss is basically hacking apart a dinosaur, and while gruesome it is part of the storyline, you're trying to stop these poachers from harming the animals, and whether it's in a video game or real life, that is 100% something I support. Let's just go ahead and hack apart the poachers. Totally fine with me. As we move to Mustafa here, he's got probably the best running attack in the game. His diving kick will just absolutely tear through so many groups of enemies, and you're going to be getting a lot of enemies on screen at once. And you'll see, if you take a look at the top of the screen, this isn't a 2-player game, it is a 3-player game, so you can bring along 2 friends for the ride and absolutely have some fun. And I love there's even the Cadillac section, because it is called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs after all. We've already seen a lot of dinosaurs, we gotta have a little bit of Cadillac to round it out. This is a very easy section of the game. You just move up and down and try to destroy everything in your path without your vehicle taking too much damage. And it is such a good multiplayer game. The best part is it's incredibly easy to play today. You can play this on MAME, it's going to emulate excellently. You can play it on Mr. FPJ like I'm playing it here. You can even grab an original arcade port if you want, but be aware, bring your wallet. They are definitely not giving these away because it is a very popular game on a very popular piece of hardware. But you'll see there Mustafa running with those dive kicks, just absolutely a crowd clear, and that's what you need to learn in this game, especially if you want to play it as a single player experience. You have to manage all the enemies in front of you. You have to attack them and knock them back to give yourself a little bit of breathing room, because this game pulls no punches, pun very much intended, when it comes to the amount of enemies you're going to see on screen at once and how you have to manage them. I do love that when you come back with another life, you get a little bit of a stagger effect with those missiles coming down. And if you do continue and put new credits into the machine, you're going to get a bazooka when you restart with 3 missiles inside of it, and if an enemy is low enough on health or low enough level, you're going to explode them, and there's going to be flesh and eyeballs just flying across the screen. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs definitely sells the violence, and it 100% works in my opinion. And because it is a Capcom game from the 90s, you know full well it's got an absolutely amazing soundtrack, so go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, and I'll be right back with more. I mean, Capcom always made a great soundtrack, but honestly, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is in my top 5 of all time. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what's the best Capcom music ever made. I would be curious to hear what people say. And do be aware that this is the Capcom CPS, but it is the expanded CPS with the Q sound chip on board, which is basically supposed to give you a pseudo-spatial surround sound vibe going on. It works sometimes, it definitely is a little bit aged, but the Q sound is a vibe. It has a completely different sound than most other sound hardware of its era, and it's something that Capcom used a ton when it came to their games, and I love some of the set pieces in here as well. Definitely feels a little bit Jurassic Parky. You have all of these dinosaurs just hovering their feet around, and you can get crushed by them, but you can also kite your enemies into their feet and get some free damage as well. If you kind of just stack those sprites up, you're going to be able to hit more than one enemy at a time, which is going to be to your benefit. And in this situation here, if you can actually get some of those higher level enemies standing under the foot, they're going to take damage, and that dinosaur is going to help you along your way. And there's so many different fun bosses in this game, and interestingly enough, it is probably one of the longest arcade beat 'em ups out there. You're talking over 50 minutes from start to finish. This game has always felt like a home console port was planned in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's on the Sega Saturn or the PlayStation 1, it's always felt like it had the length for a traditional home release, because in arcades, 15 minutes popping quarters in definitely feels maybe ever so slightly long. Now, I love all 50 minutes of the game, but I still think the best beat 'em up length is somewhere between 35 to 40 minutes. Right in that 30 to 40 mark is the sweet spot. You go any longer than that, and maybe some people might feel like I'm about ready for the game to end. I want to see how it ends. But tell me again down below, how do you feel about a 50-minute beat 'em up in arcades? Is that cool with you, or does it feel like it's going on a little bit longer? I'm sure it's going to be subjective, probably 50-50, long and not long at all, but I would be curious. And I love every single level in this game as well. Every single stage has its own unique flair and visual style and identity, and even though you're going to see a lot of the same enemies throughout the game, they are going to be well designed. Now, if there's one thing about Cadillacs and Dinosaurs that I would say I don't 100% love, it's its constant reuse of the earlier bosses as just regular enemies in the game towards the end, and sometimes you're going to be fighting 2 or 3 of those bosses at the same time. Your health bar is going to be reduced, but it's one of those things. It feels like at the end it's been artificially lengthened ever so slightly, and because it goes over 50 minutes, I don't really feel like there was any artificial lengthening needed whatsoever. I think they could have brought this game in closer to like 40 minutes, and it really wouldn't have suffered much whatsoever. But if you play with more players, it is going to be a quicker experience because you'll have more than one person fighting. And you know the video game esoteric rule of beat 'em up, it's not a true beat 'em up if it doesn't have an elevator level. And of course, you can tell right now, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs delivers that elevator. Pretty much every Capcom beat 'em up always had at least one. Again, it's a way to artificially lengthen the game, but I love seeing them. But I'm going to do one more soundtrack sample, because this music is just a straight 10 out of 10. 35 seconds, and I'll be right back with a touch more. I mean, I just love the music in this game, and I can't stress that enough. But as we get further in and we get a little bit more story, the story is as good as you're going to get in an arcade game of the era, which is to say it's going to make logical sense. It's going to give you a little bit of motivation. It's not going to be anywhere near what you would get from a home console game if they wanted to prioritize story. And you'll see here, this boss definitely is where the game feels like it is prioritizing at least a 2-player experience, because you have 2 different bosses or mirror images of the one just kind of moving around the screen, and trying to deal with them at the same time can be difficult, but it can also be fun when you stack them up. Really, you just want to focus on one, try to destroy them, and then move on to that single fight. And I love that this is basically just Blanka right here from Street Fighter in this game. Sure, it's slightly different, but you can clearly tell Capcom's borrowing a little bit from their own franchises, and that's always a fun thing. But this was a really easy game to pick this year for the Unported Playlist Hall of Fame, because it has absolutely everything going for it. It's a Capcom beat 'em up on CPS hardware, and you know that means it is just a straight up 10 out of 10, one of the best games of all time. 2, it's colorful and it includes dinosaurs, and who doesn't love them? 3, it's got an incredible soundtrack, and 4, to qualify for the Unported Playlist Hall of Fame, it's got to be unported, and we know it is. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is just one of those classic games that for some reason you've never played it before. You 100% owe it to yourself, and me included, to give it a shot. If you haven't played it in some years, trust me, it is time to revisit it. It's the perfect game for game nights. Invite some friends over, open up a few beers, get a 3-player match going, and you're just going to have so much fun. And it really does feel like the companion game to Alien vs. Predator that we'd get later on the Capcom CPS2. The only thing I could possibly say as a negative, and it is a very small one, is the game slightly longer than I think it should be, but otherwise, Hall of Fame all day long and twice on Sundays, and we'll see you next week for the next inductee. Bye-bye.